So first of all, economic growth should be prioritised over environmental protections in future trade deals. That's the line emerging from a leaked document seen by our deputy political editor, as we heard at the top of the programme. Julia, to you first of all on this, the government says nothing to see here. They say this isn't government policy. They say it's not been considered by ministers. But what's your reaction to this leaked memo from civil servants?
I think it's very worrying indeed. I mean, we've seen already the removal of the Paris commitment of aiming for 1.5 degrees from the Australia trade deal. We should be using trade deals to encourage others and to pressurise other countries to sign up and deliver on these critical Paris and net zero commitments. And we should also be using them to make sure we're protecting our own industries, because we're expecting these very high environmental standards rightly, and also expecting our own industries to be on track for net zero. We shouldn't be importing goods where people haven't had to meet those standards and indeed meet those sorts of costs.
Cel, what do you think of this? Let me just show you what the Australian Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, said. He said, in trade agreements, I deal with trade issues. In climate agreements, I deal with climate issues. I mean, some people might say the main priority here is the economy, post-Brexit, post-COVID, and any climate agreements can be made separately.
I'd have to push back on that for me, because I think the more we're learning actually that all these different areas of conversation and deals are actually all intrinsically linked with climate. And I think if we're starting to separate a trade deal and climate deal, it's actually quite ignorant, because, you know, climate affects trade and climate affects money and climate affects movement of goods and climate affects everything. So to actually approach them as two very separate things, for me, makes no sense. And actually, as I think what was written in the document just go to show that actually the economics of the deal and maybe the partnership is put him as a priority above the planet and actually the agreements that are already in place. So it doesn't come as a surprise. And once again, it is incredibly infuriating and disheartening. Just to see these kind of memos, whatever they are, being passed around. It does nothing to show me that they are taking these things seriously.
Yeah, even though the government will say that it's not policy. But Julia, what about this issue that you said about imports from countries that have less stringent environmental standards? Is there some way around that? Is there some way that this country can put some kind of carbon tariff on any of those imports so that companies in this country that are abiding by stricter rules don't lose out?
Well, we know that Europe has been considering border tax adjustments. So, for example, if you're importing steel from a country which is not decarbonising its power system, so their steel industry is getting cheaper electricity or still able to use coal, for example, that steel gets an additional tax put on it sort of as it reaches the border, so that it competes on a level playing field with the costs that industries in Europe or in a country like the UK are having to bear, the costs of supporting the decarbonisation.
And very quickly, Cel, of course, just 2 weeks till COP. Do you think this is a distraction ahead of that?
I don't know if it's a distraction. I think it's actually quite, as Julie kind of said, quite worrying, because there are promises and pledges and commitments that get made at places like COP, and knowing that these sort of letters are going around governments and that maybe these promises that feels like lip service are just that, it doesn't give me much faith that the deals and commitments we might hear come out of COP in the next couple of weeks are going to mean anything. And actually, if you look at the Paris Climate Agreement, it's a case in point. I think all you have to do is dig a little bit into the detail to realise not just the UK, but most countries aren't on track to meet the goals that they have supposedly committed to in a legally binding way. So when you look to see where is the accountability, it's just very frustrating. And again, it just doesn't fill you with much faith of what's going to come out of COP.